Minister, right now Donald Trump is speaking to Vladimir Putin. What do you expect from that phone call?
That some strong messages will be sent to Putin and describing the situation and also describing the consequences if the ceasefire will be not achieved as it was proposed not once to Putin and to Russia. Because if we are not able to achieve ceasefire at this moment, it shows that all the diplomatic efforts that Trump's administration put, and rightly so, for these months were the ones without the results. And that means that we have to introduce the other package of our instruments to achieve the ceasefire and then the peace. And those instruments are of pressure, with additional sanctions and with additional support to Ukraine. So this is the sequence as we see it. And that's why we're so much in support of US efforts into achieving the ceasefire and then just a long-lasting peace. And we see this as an additional stage where we will decide how to proceed further. So we know that there is some preparation work done in Washington, preparing the sanctions, and that's why we're saying that we have to do the same here in Europe to prepare the 18th package, and then together in coordinated manner, as we did it previously for these 3 years within the G7, we have to combine those and with the biggest synergy put the pressure on Putin, because this is what works.
Which sanctions can make Putin cease fire?
Energy resources. We should stop the major income to Russia's budget and major income to their war machine. And this is the exports of gas, oil, LNG. We have to stop those. And it worked very well, of course, with the side effects of the shadow fleet and the others with oil cap. We have to reduce it, and we have to stop importing in Europe at least LNG and of course, additional to that, this is the financial institutions that are still operating in the international system. So we have to disconnect those. And those would be the additional elements. Whether it would change the overall calculus of Putin, we will see. But we haven't used those.
But let's be realistic. Many countries in Europe, Spain, Netherlands, Belgium, are actually importing more Russian LNG right now. Will not this create an enormous shock in the European economy?
There are two things in it. First, the European Commission already prepared the paper Re-Energy Europe, showing how we can phase out from dependency on Russian exports, of us being importers. That's one thing. Another thing, we still can use the positive cooperation between US and Europe in purpose for Europe to get the alternative source of natural gas, because Lithuania, for example, is one of these countries. We were the first ones just stopped importing Russian natural gas in 2022 because of the alternative coming from US. So it worked for us. We know that there are the extra export capacities in the US. We have to use those. And now is the right time to do it, to cooperate for US and European Union, because I don't agree with the ones that say that we have no alternatives. There are alternatives. Then there are voices that say, oh, they're too expensive and it will cost us too much, we can't afford this. Look, we already did this with the oil. And then just once again remind that that is $60 oil cap, and now the price per barrel is around $50, so even less than the oil price cap that was put on it. So it shows that international market can cope with it, and it means that for Europe there are alternatives, and we have to proceed further, because otherwise we lack of instruments, and then we go to the position where we're weak and where we can just admit what Putin requires from us. And from Lithuania's point of view, that's not the direction.
Do you expect a ceasefire anytime soon?
From what we see coming from Putin, he's not interested at all, either ceasefire or the real peace talk, because the only instrument that he knows how to use it, that's the brutal force, terror and pressure that we've already seen happening in 2014, 15, with Minsk I, Minsk II agreements. Now we see it happening in Ukraine. Because if he stops using those terror instruments, like the very drone attack 2 nights before against Ukraine, the largest from the full-scale invasion after 2022. If he loses those, it means that at the table he has to talk about stolen kids, he has to talk about the accountability, he has to talk about the nuclear security, and overall about the illegal crime of aggression that he committed against Ukraine. When he has missiles flying above the head, he can project the power, he can pretend that he is in control of the situation, and we have to stop that. And once again, the instruments are in the hands of Washington together with Europe, and now it's a time to cooperate.
Are you worried about America withdrawing troops, especially from Central and Eastern Europe?
We had this question and again coming, and we hear from our American friends that they are about to review the overall posture, and we don't know the result yet. What concerns the front line, NATO front line with Russia and Belarus, we have all the reasons to believe that they will remain there, because it is the very effective way of being there, of deterrence. That is the very useful also for the US to achieve the result, and with all the host nation support that we are providing, with all the packages that are out there, with all the conditions for their training, and with our readiness to even expand the host nation support and to receive even more troops, I do not see the reasons why it should be reduced in the numbers, because this is one of the most effective cooperation, and we see how it is effective what concerns Russia's calculations in, when they consider different scenarios in the region.
So you're actually looking at potentially more American troops
in Lithuania? Yes, we are ready to accept even more troops, because we have the conditions for it, and we are expanding those. So now we have 2 battalions, so we can double it, and we are ready to do this. And we say that it's the right direction where we have to see our cooperation.
Turning to Belarus, today Vilnius took Belarus to court over the enforced migrant smuggling. Why?
Because that was absolutely illegal. That was instrumentalization of the migration, and that went against many international regulations, and that was against the human rights, and this is something that cannot be left without accountability. The state has to go with and be accountable for what the decisions were done. I was then in the security and intelligence service, and I saw how it was organized on Belarusian side. When their border guard service was turned into the enforcement of the migration. People that were protecting their border on Belarusian side for 30 almost years, they were turned into the instrument of bringing migrants and sending them into very dangerous situations across the border, pushing it to us. This was instrumentalization, and it was organized on the other side in a very way like a process and machine coming from very Minsk to the border and then forward, and was pushing with force, and that was the dangerous situations that they were creating. And that was one of the cases when we cooperated in a good way within the European Union and with our neighbors, and we managed to stop that. But it doesn't mean that it's not about to repeat. Of course, we invested a lot, we strengthened our border control, we built the fence, now we have the different procedures, but still, from the Belarusian side, they are repeating attempts to come back to this practice again. That's why we need accountability, and we need international community to see that it's not the way how you're organizing and weaponizing the people against your neighbor.
But won't Minsk only ignore the verdict? That's usually what happens.
But it's also for the others. It's the same with the crime of aggression against Ukraine, or be it the other crimes committed by those 2 regimes, or the crime against humanity when they stole the kids, more than 20,000 kids, and re-indoctrinated them in Russia and in Belarus. And that's why Belarusian regime has to be also accountable for this crime committed. But we cannot leave without accountability, because in the future they will be repeated by the others. And that is why Russia now is allowed to rewrite the history and tell the different story about the Soviet crimes, because Soviet crimes were never brought to the special tribunal, and they were never then accused and then sentenced for it, differently from the Nazi regimes. And this allows them to rewrite the history. This allows now to celebrate the 9th of May in purpose to support their aggression against Ukraine. And that was the mistake done then. So now, for the sake of the future, for the sake of the security, also for the others, it's not only for the Europeans, we have to say that it is against the international law to use the people and to instrumentalize them as the weapons.
But you also, both Lithuania and EU have sanctions on Belarus. Would this say that they have not been particularly effective then? And what would make you guys lift the sanction? What would be a thaw in relations between Belarus and Lithuania?
First of all, we have to start from the very beginning. What was the reason for the sanctions? And those were not one. And after the rigged elections in 2020, we have the one package. Then after hijacking of Ryanair that was flying to Lithuania, then was another pack. And then, of course, after the assisting Russia in aggression against Ukraine, those were the other ones. So when we remove, as Putin says, the root causes. So when we remove the root causes, then we can talk about the lifting of the sanctions, and that is the political prisoners. 1,200 still political prisoners in Belarus. That's the largest concentration in normal world of the people like this, and those practices that they use against political opposition, against the others I already mentioned, stealing of children and reindoctrinating them. For all of this, it has to be accountability. Then it has to be stopped, these practices, and then we can discuss normal trade relations. But it will be far in the future. Without it, I do not see any perspective that we can have the normal relations when the other regime acts against absolute all norms of international peaceful co-living.
But then there is a certain dilemma, and that's the battle of the heart and soul of Belarusians, but also Russians to a certain extent. There are a lot of sanctions, a lot of restrictions, etc., etc. Aren't you afraid that all these people will be perhaps caught in Ruski mir, in a Russian world, in a sense?
I am concerned about, and I've seen many phases and stages of evolving of the very idea, then building infrastructure for spreading these ideas, of being people radicalized by those ideas and believing in this Russism and supporting in the more radical ways the ideas of an imperialism of Russia. And I believe that the biggest countermeasure, that is the resilience of our societies, and in bringing the stronger message also to their society about the real developments in their countries. First of all, about the crimes committed by their regimes, and in bringing for them also the hope of the peaceful coexistence and of the democratic values being prevailing at least in Europe. So I believe in that. I saw how it works, and that's why we have to keep doing our job, preventing the attempts to rewrite the history, preventing the attempts to rewrite the current situation, and also to normalize the practices that they're cultivating. And one of those is aggression. So what's answering your question, what's the role of the sanctions and how sanctions add to it or not? That's about the propaganda machine, Russian propaganda machine. They would convert any situation, as we already see in the very recent months, how they're retelling the same stories in a different way. And I wouldn't be caught in a trap when we would restrict ourselves of doing something because Russian propaganda can turn it against us. They are turning whatever they want in the controlled environment. And the one environment that they are not controlling, that is our environment here in the free world. And we have to preserve as it is right now. And we have to do what we are doing, because sanctions are effective. And I haven't seen the lone study that would say that sanctions were not effective, that they wouldn't affect the possibilities of Russia's defense industrial sectors and production rates. They did affect. Of course, they didn't change the political behavior and the very decisions, but it did affect the overall capabilities. That's why we have to continue. And once again, that's the pressure that only works with Putin.
Turning to Georgia, it seems like the EU is not capable, as an organization, as all 27, to impose more sanctions. Is it now time to re-engage with the government in Georgia, perhaps on lower level, or should it still be isolated?
I think that we missed not once a chance to send a stronger message than to Georgian authorities about the path that they chosen. And that was with the laws that regulated the very status of NGOs. Then it was after all the mistakes done before the elections and all the flaws during the elections, as we saw in the report of different organizations. And I think that was the particular time when we had to send a stronger message, also with the sanctions. And the very way how authorities acted against the protesters on the streets, that was beyond the red lines. And we missed the chance then. And what was obvious that it will go down the hill with the democratic freedoms being more and more constrained and limited, and it would limit the capabilities of ours and the area of cooperation between European Union and Georgia. And unfortunately, this is what is happening. And that was Georgia's choice to choose Europe as the future place where they want to be with all the values. We know that the Georgian people, around 80%, still support the European direction of their country, and it is to Georgia to return to this path. So Lithuania is repeating that the best way out from this situation is to organize the fair elections again and return to the situation where we were, also recalling all the legislation that limits the activities of political opposition and also of NGOs. If not, we are heading the very bad direction, and this is the only. That's the only responsibility of Georgian authorities right now.
So you don't think that people like Kaja Kallas, like Marta Kos, should engage with the de facto government in Tbilisi?
Till we still have the European perspective at the table, we cannot engage and normalize the current situations because there were two big mistakes and steps against the democracy done previously. So I do not see the added value in continuing this. If we are reformulating everything, and if there is the different status of our cooperation, then maybe in the future there will be the considerations like this. But still there is the perspective of Georgia's European path. We cannot remodel it, because this is the very values, European values we are talking about. Free and fair elections. This is democratic institutions that Georgia are obliged to respect, and they didn't. And this is also the freedom of activities of non-governmental organizations. This is very basic principles that they have to follow. And if we are leaving this to the side, then what's on our agenda then? And of course we have many issues there. And one of those is assisting Russia in circumventing the sanctions, for example. And there are others, but those not the ones where we cooperate as the partners united by the values.
Finally, it seems like Hungary will block Ukraine from opening EU accession talks. Are you okay with decoupling Moldova from Ukraine and only let Moldova in June or July start accession talks and let Ukraine go behind?
First of all, our enlargement process is based on the merit-based principle. It's grounded on it. It means that each country is assessed by the achievements, and we have the criteria, whether they meet those or not, comply with this one or not. So when we have the similar situation, overall assessment has to be similar, and the steps from the European side has to be the same. So these are the principles that we are talking about. And this current situation, when there are some political motives to obstruct the process, and it's used in a different way than it was created, the unanimity, for example, in certain decisions, then we have to, a bit pause and rethink how it is organized. Whether we have to review overall methodology, then if we cannot apply those basic principles that have to be applied. So for us, this is more fundamental than tactical, than whether we go with the one country or with another. Because there would be many unanimity requiring votes in the future. And if we are stuck with, we will be stuck with each steps like this time, it will mean that it will be corrupt anyways as the enlargement. So for us, this is the matter of principle. We have to apply it to each candidate country, and be it Ukraine, be it any country in the Western Balkans. And if we cannot achieve that, then we have to rethink overall model. We cannot be taken hostages by some short and narrow political principles.
Sure, but this decision will have to come June, in a few weeks. So when you sit in that chair, will you be okay with saying, okay, let's decouple them, or will you say no, everyone stops?
I'm still optimist that we will achieve the result till the end of June, as we were expecting it, that the first clusters will be opened with Ukraine and Moldova. We understand that now Ukraine is the main machine that is pushing forward the overall enlargement process, and I'm still optimist that we will achieve the result in the final, the last European Council at the end of June. Let's see, maybe we will be resultive in this one. Otherwise, we have to all understand that without Ukraine in EU, there will be no geopolitical European Union. European Union as the global actor will have the fundamental problems to operate. That's why we need Ukraine. And without the Ukraine, all the other enlargement process loses the sense. So that's why we have to concentrate and think less about decoupling, but if it is needed, we should think about the principles and the different mechanism how to proceed further. We cannot stop with Ukraine now. We have to promise, and as we did already to Ukraine, European membership. We have to set the deadline, and Lithuania is standing for January 1st, 2030 as a deadline for Ukraine's membership. And there is a very tight schedule to proceed further, and we have to concentrate on it. Of course, we cannot forget that there are some different voices at the table. But then again, if it is needed, let's go into the depths. Why they're there? Is it because of the exact interest that is put at the table? Or is it because of the political manipulation and the attempt to obstruct the process as such? If it is the case, then we have to discuss the very principles of being a member of European Union and what are the obligations. And one of the obligations is to cooperate with a good faith, because this is where we are the partners. If we cannot agree on this, then the question is whether we are in the same team and which team one of us is playing. And for me, this is fundamental then. And it's not about the one step whether we will, couple or decouple. This is about who we are at the end of the day.
So for you, Hungary is on the Russian team, not the European one.
We have to answer this question, and I'm open to discuss it, really, because this is the time where Europe has to face everything in sharp colors. Because this is the time where it's really black is black, white is white, and you cannot be in the gray zone and sit on the fence. Because this is the future of European security that is now at the stake. And I cannot imagine how someone cannot understand this very clearly. And it's not about only Ukraine, that's about Europe. As we talk about the NATO security, that's not about Baltic countries, that's about all the Europe. And if someone thinks that some small-scale conflict at the border somewhere wouldn't affect their lives, that's false. Everything will come up with the huge destructive power, be it the political structures, be it economy, financial, and the other effects. That's why we have to get serious, and also about what unites us, and about the European Union enlargement, and many other things, about the sanctions, about the rollover of the sanctions, and about assisting Ukraine. If we are reluctant to assist Ukraine, I'm ready to discuss what are the other options. What are the options for Europe after Ukraine collapsing and being defeated and fully occupied by Russia? So what's next then? Where is our bright future? And the problem is that those voices are, when you confront them, they are silent and they go somewhere under the carpet. We have to bring them out and confront them.
Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.